to talk about right now. And there's a
Yep.
lot of things that are happening as we speak. And that's something we need to get into.
Okay, we're going to do that. We are going to talk about the IDF and the progress that they have made going into Gaza. We're going to talk about the talk right now that is going on as we speak in the current moment live over the hostages. I do want to say this. Before we do, I want to thank you guys for your support for us. The fact that you are giving us love on Super Chat, Super Stickers, on Rumble as well. I want to thank you in advance for that. For our Rumble audience, please pass the link on to other folks. We had a technical glitch. Rumble can be clumsy sometimes, and we kind of ran into one of those situations, so we're sorry about that. But we are back up and running, and we are good to go. I do just want to acknowledge very quickly before we get into it, because there is a lot to get into. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Brad Brunn, you are the first. You say, thank you, Lord, for fellow pastors like Brother James and Brother Dale who stand up for your word, Lord. Thank you for using them to encourage believers daily. Thank you, Brad. And Brad, by the way, we are doing a live Thanksgiving special, me and Dale. Looking forward to that. That's going to be good on Thanksgiving Day. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then Melinda, thank you so much, Melinda. You're part of our family. You know, me and my family pray for Melinda and her family every single day for a lot of reasons that I can't even talk about, but her and her family are a national treasure. And thank you for your support, Melinda. Melinda says, blessings, Pastor James and David TaL from beautiful North Carolina.
Ooh.
Praying for, and yeah, she's visiting North Carolina right now with her family. All servants of our country. And it's just a beautiful thing, the kind of support that we get. So she is praying for the peace of Jerusalem, the IDF, for the safe return of the hostages. God bless you and have a blessed Thanksgiving. We love you. We're thankful for you, Melinda. David, let's get into it. I know that what I wanted to start with initially was this discussion of Al-Shifa and some of the implications of that. Matter of fact, that was kind of what the show was sort of centered around, but things have changed very rapidly. I want to say this to everybody. I just had an interview with David TaL from Israel, and you are not going to want to miss that. It's going to air on Friday. Very insightful, but it kind of goes along the lines of many of the things we're going to talk about right now. So the hostages, let's talk about this. There's a lot to talk about here, so run with it, bro. Let's go.
Well, the basis of this is 235 Israeli hostages inside Gaza. They were grabbed on the 7th of October and brought into Gaza. The backdrop of all of this is that some of the hostages are in the hands of the Hamas. Some of the hostages are in the hands of the Islamic Jihad. And some of the hostages were literally grabbed by, I don't know, what do you call them? Crime lords in Gaza who saw the hole in the fence, crossed over, found somebody bleeding on the floor in one of the kibbutzim and brought him back in. And now they're playing games with all the hostages. So Hamas doesn't even know how many hostages there are, and he doesn't have control over everyone. What we know is that there's 236, about 30 of them children. And for the last week, there's been a massive negotiation about returning of hostages in return for, and that's what's going on right now.
Okay, David, I got to stop you for a second because you're saying there's 236. That kind of bothers me a little bit because initially those numbers were a lot higher. Does that mean we have confirmed that many of those hostages are deceased now? What's the story with that?
Okay, what happened originally is that after the attack, there were a lot of bodies, people who were killed, and there were people who disappeared. And until they identified all of the bodies, they assumed that they were kidnapped.
I see.
Okay? But then, I mean, think about this. Some of the bodies were burnt. Yeah. Some of the bodies were hacked. Some of the bodies. So the forensic teams are how do you say, IDing bodies. So when they ID somebody that's in the morgue and has been in the morgue, and they've just now ID'd them because of all kinds of stuff. Because think about this. This is a massive forensic
Oh, my goodness.
attack.
I can't even imagine.
Okay, then all of a sudden we realize that this one is not in Gaza. This is a body that we have here. Or sometimes it's just enough. Now, here's the thing. They also took dead bodies. And one of the things that they published on their own video is a woman that had body parts amputated that had been, you can see, sexual molested, but was executed, and they put her in the back of a truck, and they were parading her through. So we know that they also took dead bodies, and here's the whole thing. And that's the whole dynamic of what's going to happen. There is a question about if we do reach a hostage agreement, how many of the people are going to be alive, how many people are dead, and they're not saying who's dead and who's alive. They haven't given us any knowledge whatsoever.
That's heavy. That is heavy.
But I call it emotional terrorism. What's going on today?
Oh yeah.
Because the government, the Israeli government, literally right now is sitting down and deciding if they are going to okay this agreement or not. We don't have all of the details, but we're more or less getting what details that we have.
Can I ask you a question? What does it mean to okay an agreement? Because if they okay an agreement, does that mean they're going to leave Hamas alone? Like, me and you have talked about this. So, just for the sake of our audience understanding, developing an understanding of all of this.
No, what we're saying, what Israel is saying again and again, we're not going to leave Hamas alone. This is a pause in order to release hostages. Let's go back to the beginning. Israel stated that there are two main objectives. One is to finish off Hamas, and two is to release the hostages. They never said what was more important. And basically, that's what we've been kind of achieving since the beginning of the ground offensive inside Gaza. But now there's an overlap between the two. Meaning, okay, we've got Hamas on its back leg. And again, the Al-Shifa Hospital is part of the story. The Rantisi Hospital is part of the story. There's other
part of the story there.
There's other stories that are connected. But basically, Hamas is on its back leg. And now Hamas is screaming, let us breathe. I mean, they're down in the hole. They don't have food for a month already. Okay, what are we going to do? And in order to achieve a breath of fresh air, for lack of a better word, they're willing to give up some of the hostages. They see the hostages as, at least some of them, as not as an asset, but as something that they have to take care of. And they're afraid that they're going to lose these hostages and look bad. So they're willing to give back some of the hostages. They're talking about the children, basically. Though I just now realized, I just now heard from the Israeli news that not all the children are going to be released. But basically, the original agreement was to release children and the mothers of the children, probably about 50 hostages, in return for 4 or 5 days of ceasefire. Mm-hmm. That was the basic idea. Now I'm waiting to get the final story. We're waiting to hear the final numbers. So the Hamas comes back through the Qataris with, okay, this is what Hamas wants.
Through the
Qatar, yes.
Can we just stop for a second and analyze that for just 1 second? How egregious. Why in the world are we not sanctioning, forgive me for saying this, the living you-know-what out of Qatar?
America sees Qatar as an asset, or as, I'm not going to say an ally, but more or less as a strategic asset inside the Gulf. Until
we're destroyed.
Qatar is by definition considered a semi-NATO ally. That's what the Americans dictated. And the largest American military base is in Qatar. On the other hand, the largest anti-American news organization is in Qatar.
Yeah, we know. But, Al Jazeera.
Yep, and they've been playing the merchant role. Okay, and in this case, the merchants and literally merchants in blood, and they are, how do you say, receiving. I think in their minds they would be saying that they are receiving credit and honor for what they're doing, and they're actually the only ones that can walk between Israel and the Hamas right now.
I want people to understand why I despise Qatar. I despise Qatar. They are hosting, they're allowing to live some of the top leaders of Hamas, which if you take 3 of them, just 3 of their top leaders, their net worth is almost $13 billion.
Yes. It is very lucrative to be the head of Hamas. 1, you and your children live very well. And 2, you're not under threat. They're not living in Gaza. I mean, they're not anywhere in Gaza. And 3, you make a lot of money. And to be a how do you say Hamas revolutionary, for lack of a better word, okay, means that you're making a lot of money, kind of as this.
That's crazy. That's your coffee, by the way. I'm I despise that. I do not know why the United States of America is not sanctioning the living snot out of them. And I know that there is right now a member of the House that is doing that, which I'm very thankful for, is actually wanting to do that. But I mean, one member of the House doesn't mean anything unless you have some type of general consensus to be able to basically say, yeah, this is correct. You know what I mean? This is insane.
But here, like everything else, you've got enough members of the House that are still playing the game, for lack of a better word, of walking the tight line between them. And I saw some of the squad and some of, I'm going to say even some of the
A bunch
Democrats,
of evil animals.
but I'm going to say something even and a little bit deeper, maybe. Even normal, positive Israel supporting people today, both on the Democrat and more in both the Republican, or I'm going to even say even in the church world, are making a moral equivalency between Israel and the Hamas.
There is no moral equivalency.
And it's not fair. We need to stop the fire. All lives matter. And in a nutshell, are handing the Hamas the victory. Because maybe we need to talk about what the Hamas thought they were going to achieve.
Isn't it funny? Can I just interrupt you by just simply saying it's a crack up to me how when the Black Lives Matter movement was prominent, right? Now they've been proven to be the frauds that they've always been, right? But when they were prominent, the one thing that could happen is you could say all lives matter and they would say
They would freak out.
you're a racist, you're this, you're that. Now in this case, they're saying all lives matter. It doesn't even make sense, by the way. I think you have to lower that the volume there because it's being picked up through the microphone. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I think we got it there. So I it's the hypocrisy on this absolutely doesn't know any boundaries. It's completely insane.
I don't believe it's hypocrisy. And again, I think
I know what you mean when you say that. I think I
there's
agree.
more than hypocrisy going on. The double standard is a result of a mindset or a movement or I'm going to say a spiritual wind that is blowing through the Western world right now and is separating the wheat from the chaff, both on the political in the society, even in the church as we speak right now.
I would agree.
So I think it's more than hypocrisy actually that's being problematic here.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Wholeheartedly agree with you on this, and I think that this is an issue that we have to absolutely expose and deal with. Okay, so where are we at right now? Let's talk about this because the hospital stuff is something I wanted to talk about, but where are we going with this? What do you think are the potential implications of this?
Oh, sorry, that's a missile.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
are missiles being fired at Israel as we speak.
Are they coming from the north, by the way? Or
No,
are they these are
in
all
the south.
Gaza?
All of these were in the south just now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is something that I just can't turn off. I mean, I just
Yeah, I get it. I understand.
And so let's start off at the beginning. The Hamas has offered a deal, a hostage deal. Israel doesn't. Well, here's the thing: Israel's torn between finish off Hamas and release the hostages. And Israel is saying, "Wait a minute! If they're offering hostages, you can't say no." But then, okay, the minute you say that, you're in a negotiation. How many hostages? How old are they? Who are they? What do they do? What do we get in return? The deal that was kind of reached and agreed on more or less was more or less 40, 50 hostages. That's what we know before the final okay. In return for 4 or 5 days of ceasefire, including, and this is something really, really interesting, just so you know what they're trying to reach, including 6 hours a day where there's no surveillance, aerial surveillance.
But why on God's green earth would Israel agree to doing that? Can I just say this?
Because
them agreeing to do that is as egregious as them not paying attention the security.
James, they're children. nobody can say
But David,
we're offering children and we'll say no.
But
I
David,
mean,
can I ask you this
even
question?
if it takes us longer to finish off the Hamas,
No, forgive me for saying this. Can I ask you this question?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it has to be asked, and I'm sorry, because if it was my children, I would give the whole world for my children. Okay? So I get it. Okay? But let me ask you, if I give Hamas 5 days to regroup, 5 days to cut up more water pipes and build rockets, 5 days to go hide deeper in tunnels, 5 days, you can do a lot in 5 days.
I know.
What are you saying? Are you saying that I'm going to sacrifice 3 members of the IDF for 1 child?
Basically, yes. I think the military has told the government, listen, even if we give them those 5 days, we can still finish this mission. It might be longer. It might take us more. But if this will release 20, 30, 40 hostages, then the IDF is willing to take that price.
Okay, so here's my question. Because we know
I
that
think this is a discussion that's been going on in Israel.
No, I get it. So I know that they will not stop at military targets. So let's take it a step further. 5 days to regroup to attack more Jews. I mean, are we thinking about this at all?
No, they're not.
5 days to regroup to give Hezbollah an opportunity to attack from the north?
Well, okay, let's go back. Okay, I think one of the reasons Israel has agreed to this, and again, I'm not inside and I'm not the intelligence, but it seems like Hezbollah has stayed out. Iran has stayed out as of now, meaning if they had wanted to do it, they should have done it.
But David, I don't want to cut you off, okay? And forgive me for asking a difficult question because it needs the question needs to go
That's what
forward.
we're here for.
Israel got arrogant. I am an apologist for Israel. I will defend Israel to my dying day because I love the Jewish people and I love Israel and I love God and I'm going to love Israel. I am a Zionist in the truest form. I get it, okay? But here's my question, because this is very, very important. The greatest and most significant mistake that we made in Israel was that we underestimated our enemy.
Totally.
I played the video of one of the leaders of Hamas saying
This is what
that on purpose for 2 years, we pretended to be working with Israel so that we could wait until they're completely off guard and attack them.
Okay.
I aired a portion of a video that Kaddis did. I want you to watch it. In Hebrew, by the way. He interviewed a man from the central part of Israel. I forgot his name. He's very smart man. It's all in Hebrew. And he pointed out something very true and very important, like critically true and critically important, right? You have a bigger problem waiting right now in Judea and Samaria than you ever do with Hamas.
Yep.
Because the problem with the Palestinian Authority and what's going on right now, and the problem with Hezbollah is the same problem that we saw manifest with Hamas. They are pretending to work with us for a little while, for as ever long as they're going to do, until they're ready to attack. So why are we making the general assumption? Why is Israel making the general assumption that we can make a reasonable assertion that things are going to be safe because Nasrallah gave a speech where he told everybody, you're on your own?
No. I don't
but that's
think
what it appears to be.
I don't think it. I don't think Israel is saying we're not going to have to deal with Nasrallah, and I don't think Israel is saying we're not going to have to deal with the PA. Okay, Israel knows. Right now, we are centered on Gaza. I think, and we're talking about this again and again. I'm not the leader. I'm not there, but I think the public opinion. I'm not an official representative of Israel, but the public opinion in Israel is, when we finish with Gaza, we're going to have to deal with the Hezbollah. We can't allow this to continue. We can't allow that ticking bomb to stay over there. And that means that we are going to, and this is what's going to happen, and maybe this is something that the people need to know, because when this happens, all hell is going to go. We're going to need to preempt the Hezbollah issue. That's going to happen. Now, when Israel preempts anything, look what happened in 1967. The world said, we're going to take you off. We're going to destroy you. The Muslim world said, we're going to destroy you. And Israel preempted 1967, and we're still being blamed for that. So, but we're going to preempt. We're going to have to preempt probably the Hezbollah issue. The world's going to go crazy at us. And again, tie this into prophecy if you want. If you want a reason for all the world to be against Israel, here's your reason. But basically, I think Israel realizes that we're going to have to get rid of this.
But I guess that's my problem. The problem that I have, and I'm not a military technician by any stretch of the imagination, but my problem is if you extend 5 days to these animals, because that's what they are, okay? If you extend, forget it, not even animals, they're savages. If you extend 5 days to these savages, that's 5 days that Israel is vulnerable, more vulnerable than ever.
No,
from attacks from the north. Well, it is, because the idea here is we're at a ceasefire. Many of the assets of Israel is sitting in Gaza right now. I know there's a lot of people up in the north. I get that. But my question is why in the world would they stop from? I know. I get the hostages thing. I completely understand that. But they're negotiating with terrorists.
Here's the thing, okay? What would you do if it was your kids?
I already said it. I would I would give the whole world for it. Negotiating with terrorists or not, I would. I agree.
Would you tell the army, wait? And the army's going to say, wait a minute, it's going to make our job harder. And you're going to say, yeah, I don't care, but these are my kids.
Undoubtedly, I would, David. I'm not
to
lying.
A certain extent, I think what people need to understand that is the kind of decision that is being made. The state of Israel has decided, the Israeli public has decided to wipe Gaza off the map. We're giving them 5 days of breathing room, and yes, we're probably making it harder, and yes, we're probably making it more complicated. I don't think we're adding on danger from the Hezbollah. I don't think that. And here's the big question.
But what if Hezbollah is lying, David?
No, again.
And they probably are. What if they are?
So it doesn't change. The forces in the north are still in the north. I mean, we're staring down the Hezbollah, and the Hezbollah is not going to be able to pull off what they did. They will pull off something else, and we're back at the scenario that we've talked on this show a couple of times.
Yes.
Hezbollah presses the button, Iran goes into it, America goes into it, Russia goes into it, and China goes into it.
Yep.
I mean, we might be on the edge of that still, and that doesn't change. That 5 days doesn't change that, I don't believe. That 5 days gives the Hamas breathing room. And I watched a very interesting video, and I was sitting there and trying to figure out, okay, what's happening? And if I get a couple of minutes, I want to run down what I think Hamas is trying to achieve, and I think didn't really work out. Because when Hamas went into this on the 7th of October, one of the reasons a lot of people believe that they went into this, by the way, we understand now that they didn't coordinate it with the Iranians, meaning it's not like they didn't coordinate the idea, they didn't coordinate the actual
the actual time of the action.
They didn't coordinate the event. So everybody's asking, why did they pull off this event? And we believe two things. One was the Abrahamic Accords, and they believed
they wanted to stop the Accords.
They wanted to stop the Accords, and we've talked about how that puts a wrench into the prophecy dynamic.
Which they may have accelerated it, by the way, by doing that.
Which is very interesting. We can get to that in a minute. And the second is that rave/party that took place on the edge of their border, literally, 500 yards from the border, that gave them a couple thousand people, couple thousand potential hostages that they could have grabbed. I mean, without that rave, the amount of hostages would have been probably half, and if not less, and the amount of dead would have probably been much, much less.
Yeah, I would agree.
So they decided we can't let this chance go, and they pushed the button without coordinating with Iran. But they did believe deep down, and Senor said, and Hamas said 3 days afterward, we called out to our resistance friends and we asked them get on the bandwagon. And here's the thing, they didn't.
Yep,
they didn't.
And I get it. I'm with you on that, and I agree. I see the fact that is definitely thank the God of Israel for the fact that they did it, because if they did, this would have been a way worse situation than what we're thinking about.
So what I'm thinking is Hamas is now, Sinjar is sitting in his bunker somewhere, or the heads of Hamas are sitting in their bunkers. They said, we thought maybe the Israelis would just let this blood, like we've done in the past. I mean, they'd bomb a couple of buildings, and then we'd sit down and negotiate with the hostages because we got all these hostages. That didn't happen. Then they said, okay, Israel is going to go crazy on us, but is the way I say it, as long as we can fly one Palestinian flag out of the rubble, we've won. And again, I don't know who said this, but somebody said that a terrorist doesn't need to win; he needs to survive. Because if he survives, he wins.
No, I agree.
So they thought Israel was going to go on, and they still believe, by the way, that at the end of this, they're going to have a flag to wave. The third option that they thought was a better option is not only do they start this, but they spark off the whole Middle Eastern war, and that would be a strategic thing for them. So what's happening is this. Option number 1 didn't happen. Israel is inside Gaza. Option number 3 is not going to happen. It's not going to spark off. And they're still thinking that they're going to come out of this with option number 2, meaning death and destruction, because they don't care how many people are killed in Gaza. In fact, the more people killed in Gaza, the better.
Better for them.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they're thinking at the end of this, they're going to wave a flag and they're going to say, we won, and become, how do you say, the puppy dogs of the whole Muslim world, especially the Muslim world in the West. It's really interesting that in the Muslim countries, all the demonstrations have died down. The only demonstrations that are still going on are the Muslims in countries that are democratic, in countries that won't shut them up, in countries where they have freedom of speech.
Or confused leftist idiots that don't know the difference between a boy and a girl. In our case, that's what we're seeing right here.
Or don't know the difference between good and evil.
Yeah.
And that's another one. But okay, so here's the thing. They still don't believe that Israel is going to come after them. Here's the $1 million question. We're going into this hostage situation because Israel cannot allow to give up 50 hostages and not do it. The question is going to be answered in a week from now, 4 days, 5 days, a week from now. Does Israel go back on, and does Israel finish off Hamas in Gaza?
They have to.
And everybody agrees, we agree, everybody in Israel agrees that we have to.
Saudi Arabia will not normalize without us destroying Hamas.
No, not only Saudi Arabia, the whole
Middle
world.
Eastern world.
No, but all the jihadis all over. The jihadis in Deer and here, what do you call it? Deersford in Michigan.
Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan.
Dearborn, Michigan. All of the jihadis in Dearborn, Michigan are waiting right now to see what happens to Hamas, because they say if it happens to Hamas, we got to be careful. If Hamas comes out of the standing, we can push the jihadi button in Dearborn, in New York, in LA. The whole jihadi world, all the little Osama bin Ladens that's grown up. And by the way, there's a lot of people in the Arab world named Osama bin Laden. Okay? I know. Okay, they're all waiting to see what's going to happen. If we don't finish off Hamas, then you guys are going to have a serious, serious problem. We will too. This is an existential threat for us. But, and again, I think I stood on the bus 2 months ago. And I said, everything's changed. Israel doesn't have an existential threat. We're not afraid that we're going to be wiped off the map. The only thing I thought back then would actually put us in jeopardy would be an atom bomb in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Which would.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's another dynamic. But now we see that this kind of threat, if we actually let the neighborhood know that we're not standing up to the bullies, then it's just a matter of time that all the bullies come out of the cracks.
Yeah, undoubtedly. But then the other problem that we have, and I hope this puts an end to it, but it sounds like we're going back in that direction if this happens, right? And I'm worried about this, right? It's a concern for me. One of the biggest disasters that came out of the Obama regime, one of the biggest disasters, besides his open hatred for Israel and his blatant anti-Semitism, right? But he gave veto power to the Palestinians. And people don't understand that.
Yep.
The idea is basically, and John Kerry was the one that ran his mouth, going around as the Secretary of State telling everybody, we are not going to make peace without a two-state solution for the Palestinians. He basically gave them veto power, knowing full well that the Palestinians will not settle or be happy with a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution, and Israel is not a part of that.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea. So already we have an issue here, and Israel has to loudly and blatantly and aggressively remove that rhetoric.
Okay, we can't. I mean,
no, they remove it by basically saying it's not an option.
We need to remove Hamas. The only way this ends if Hamas actually comes out of the rubble and says enough. This is the only way it ends, and no other way. Because any other scenario, leaves Israel in a problem. I think Israel believes this and understands this today.
But even if Hamas comes out and says, enough, we were wrong, they can't exist anymore.
Oh, no.
They have to be tried. They have to be sentenced.
So we're going back to what happens the day after.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, what happens the day after, James?
The day after we destroy Hamas, or the day after Hamas?
The day after we destroy Hamas.
Like, the day after, let me just tell you what I think has to happen the day after Hamas is destroyed. The day after Hamas is destroyed, Israel doesn't have an option. They have to be in Gaza, and they have to stay in Gaza. They don't have a choice.
How long?
Egypt is not going to be in Gaza.
How long?
As long as it takes to stabilize the region.
How do you stabilize? I mean, we tried to do that in Lebanon.
The bottom line is this, is you maintain a series of security goals, right, that are going to be difficult. Yes, everyone's going to flip out about checkpoints. They're going to flip out about this. They're going to flip out about that. But the reality of it is Israel, look, let me just say this. Until the Lord comes back and deals with the whole world is when Israel has to occupy Gaza. Because there's no way in the world you're going to deprogram the mind of a jihadist who reads the Quran and realizes that the Quran tells them to kill Jews.
What brought Egypt to the peace agreement in 1979?
Okay, so this is my theory on what brought Egypt to a peace agreement in 1979, and I really believe this. Okay. There are two countries that we know are not mentioned in the final attacks. Many countries not mentioned in the final attacks of Ezekiel 38 that we read about towards Israel. Egypt is not mentioned. Jordan is not mentioned. Perhaps one of the things that we should also point out is that later on in the book of Isaiah, Egypt is mentioned as a friend of Israel. And actually a nation that Israel is blessed by God, a nation that God blesses because of the kindness that they extend. So first and foremost, without getting into a lot of very vivid detail with the biblical implications of all of this, I am convinced that the reason why Egypt made peace the way that they did and it happened was because it was spiritual. God manipulated the minds and the hearts of world leaders to put that together to make it happen. I mean, think about this, brother. You know this, right? These are the same group of people that assassinated Sadat. They did not want any peace. And Egypt now is forever married to that because Egypt recognizes that they have no real economic basis for prosperity if they don't continue to have a relationship with Israel.
So who wants a two-state solution?
So let me just say this because there's a point here, right? Egypt definitely doesn't want a two-state solution. They might publicly say they do, but they don't want a two-state solution in Israel. And the reason why they don't want a two-state solution is one very simple word. It's very easy to say it, right? I'll just make it clear. Sinai. They don't want a two-state solution for that reason and that reason alone. An overwhelming majority of the outside income that they bring in, besides the Suez Canal, centers around activity in the Sinai that continues to be threatened by the presence of Islamic Brotherhood, that continues to be fueled by a two-state solution that exists within Egypt within Israel because it becomes the forefront of the political prowess.
So they don't want a two-state solution.
So they don't want it. They don't.
Who does want a two-state solution?
My belief on the who wants the two-state solution are anybody that becomes directly affected by that same population being in their country. So Jordan will seek out a two-state solution, even though they'll never publicly say it or talk about it. But for them, they feel like it's a benefit to them because they don't want the Palestinians back in their country.
Totally.
The Syrians feel the exact same way. They are very vocal about the desire of a two-state solution. At least one contingency of the Syrians are absolutely wanting that. But think about this. Even Assad has no desire to see the presence of Palestinians back in Syria.
So we're back at who does want. I mean, let's add on one. Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution.
No, Hamas wants
Israel destroyed. They say and they do that, and they're willing to die for that.
Yeah, and it's convenient for them to be the case, but this is where it gets very complicated. Okay, Syria might be the only exception to this rule, but all of the other nations that want to see a two-state solution of some sort want a real two-state solution. They don't want Israel being eliminated, and here's the reason why. If Israel gets eliminated, then what also happens are their security and economic interests get eliminated. Because if Israel is eliminated, then there's no way to secure the assets that are militarily important like the Golan Heights,
among other things.
among other things, right? The northern part of Israel, where the Galilean finger is right there, where all of those peaks oversee the valley. There's military reasons why Beirut doesn't want that to happen. Syria doesn't want that to happen. Definitely, if you go talk to anybody in Amman or Aqaba or anywhere over there, they're going to say the same exact thing. They don't want any of this stuff to happen, because if it does, then in essence, they completely destabilize their own security positions.
So what is going to happen if Israel does finish off Hamas? And that's the whole message.
I tell you what's going to happen. Israel is stupid, and they're not stupid, but they are stupid if they do not continue to stay in Gaza to occupy, and I hate using the term occupy, but to secure the interests of the people. They have to.
So Israel's going to de facto turn into the government in Gaza again.
I think that's going to have to be that way for a while. Yes. That sounds crazy, but I think it's going to have to be that way.
So there's a lot of people who think that, though Israel is trying to pass it off. And I know the United States wants...
but who are they going to give it to, Habibi?
Well, the United States wants to put Mahmoud Abbas in there.
Yeah, Abbas. Mahmoud Abbas. Let me just say this. I finished translating. I did a video. The video got 500,000 views where I translated Mahmoud Abbas. He gave a speech where he talked about the fact that Hitler was justified in the murder of Jews because he did not kill them because they were Jews. He killed them because of what the Jews did to society.
We understand the problem. Okay.
So he's evil. Why in the world would we ever capitulate to the ideals of the United States of America in doing so? By the way, let me just tell you this.
So what does Israel want? What do you think Israel wants?
The game, well, so can I back up?
Yeah.
Because there's a game piece issue that we have to address here, right? The reason why Biden even entered into Israel to show his so-called solidarity for Israel, right? First of all, he didn't help Israel. He made it worse for Israel when he showed up and he put those carriers in the Mediterranean because he slowed Israel down. And there's a reason why he did that. He was trying to hold several people at bay. But what he was basically trying to do was he was trying to buy a ticket back into an important position in the region because he pretty much forsook it. And let me tell you where that started.
He lost the election for that.
Yeah. And let me tell you where that started. That started immediately and right away. It started when he declared the Yemeni Houthis no longer terrorists. When that happened, everybody started paying attention. Saudi Arabia started looking at this. The UAE started looking at this. The people who had already entered into normalization. Here's the thing that people don't understand. When they entered into normalization with Israel, they did that with the guarantee of a very strong American president who said, we will defend your security interests in the presence of a Shiite state by the name of Iran.
But then America disappeared. America disengaged from the Middle East. They're gone.
America didn't just disengage. Trump early on chose to disengage from the Middle East with the understanding that we're going to come back and bring hell on you if you choose to go beyond the barriers. It's not just a matter of disengagement. It's a matter of open denial of what remains to be the greatest threats in the region for the big players involved. So when he said, no more, we're not going to any longer declare these Houthis as enemy combatants, they tied the hands of Saudi Arabia to be able to do what they did. And I'm going to make myself very clear, okay? MBS will never forget that. The Saudi royal family will never, ever forget that.
No, I think we all understand that we cannot trust the United States, which is why Saudi Arabia, Jordan, okay, we're all saying, all right, we're going to have to stand together in this.
Yeah.
Okay, which is weird because Jordanians, the Saudis, the Gulf states, at least some of them, and Israel are on the same side of the ball. But let's go back. What does Israel want at the end of this?
Okay, so I'm going to get to that answer because this is, but there's a background I think that we have to go back to, okay? Because all of this, what led up to all of this were a series of hugely destructive things that the Americans did. United States of America did this. The United States of America under a man who was practically Muslim. Let's just call it for what it is, right? He was educated and prominently brainwashed by a Muslim man who believes in the destruction of every Jewish life. Okay? When he did what he did and Kerry went around and basically said, we're not going to do anything for the Mideast with respect to peace unless there's a two-state solution, they recognized that that campaign effort wasn't going to be strong and wasn't going to move forward. So you know what they did? They got involved and they destabilized two very important and critical countries that maintained the status quo of border security or regional security. And those two countries were Egypt, with Shawara Tahrir, when the president was deseated by the Islamic Brotherhood president. If you remember the whole story with Morsi and what happened with Mubarak and that whole situation, right? So they did that. By the way, that was all Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton did all of that. Her State Department did all of that. So when that happened in Egypt, in Shawara Tahrir, then the other problem was a little town called Benghazi. Okay? What the United States of America didn't realize was that Egypt had enough of a disgust for the Islamic group that destroyed the life of one of their favorite presidents to actually rally enough support to destroy and drive out the influence of Islamic Brotherhood in Egypt. And what they didn't realize with what they did in Benghazi was that they were going to set a civil war in motion, by the way, that Russia would end up winning. And the reason why Russia would end up winning it is because of something we all know as Afghanistan. Russia was in Afghanistan and they lost bad. And we understand exactly what happened with all of that. They didn't make the same mistake this time. They inserted themselves in a civil war that the United States of America created, especially with the elimination of Gaddafi. And when that took place, America recognized something. The current regime that we're in, that's in office, we have lost control over a region that's critical for us to be able to have some control in. So this move to the Mediterranean was pretty much this regime trying to buy some level of credibility or clout back. Now, what does Israel want in all of this? I'm going to just make myself very clear. Israel wants to maintain a secure, sovereign nation where its people will never be under the threat of destruction. All the Israelis want that. Every single Jew wants that. Kaddis told me in the interview that you're going to see on Friday, it almost made me cry. He told me a story, bro, when he was a 12-year-old boy. You think about the just amazing that you hear the story of his father, who at 12 years old could read 4 different languages and was reading all kinds of news stories about all kinds of things happening. And as a little boy, he told his father, convinced him, this is no place for the Jews, where they were living in Europe. Like, let's go. And being on a boat, listen to this, Habibi, being on a boat for 4 months, going from shore to shore to shore to shore, from country to country to country to country, we said, we don't want Jews here. 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 Only to find out that their own survival was at great risk. And then to be able to come back to a country that God made available to them, where they can repatriate themselves as a people. Kaddis even said it. He made it very clear. I am determined in the work that I do to make sure that no boy ever has to sit in a boat and wonder if they're going to survive.
So that was the idea behind Israel. And we came here and we settled here and we created a country and we thought we were going to be safe.
Yeah.
What happened on the 7th of October is that never again happened again.
Yeah.
What happened on 7th of October is the safety of the Jewish state as a Jewish state is not as safe as we thought it was. What happened is that we realized that if we try to put up a big enough wall and strong enough system and try to be enough, we try to be scary, it's not going to solve the problem. We have to not try to be scary. We not just have to say we're scary.
You have to be scary.
If we don't make sure that the enemy is scared of us, then that's not going to happen. And I
agree.
think Israel has understood this. Again, what's going to happen in 3 days? By the way, the agreement has been approved.
Wow.
We're talking about 30, only 30 children. And probably about 12 of the mothers of the children. That means not even all the children have been released.
And we're giving them 5 days for this?
I think, I haven't seen, but I think 3 days, maybe 5.
I can't blame them for doing this deal. I just can't. But my heart breaks because Israel is about to enter into a deeply difficult and painful time. And let me tell you
more than people really realize, because again, this is going to be the question that the Hamas is trying to put: hostages, survival, meaning they are going to cost. I mean, it's not enough for them to pay the lives. They've realized that the lives of the Palestinians in Gaza are not what are going to stop Israel. What they're saying is now the lives of your people are going to hold you back.
Okay, so David, so now if this goes through, which it looks like it will, then at the time when Jews all over the world are supposed to be celebrating Hanukkah, but we get December 8th is when that starts. I think December 8th.
I'm not sure, but yeah.
December 8th. Okay, now they're going to be praying to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, asking for his deliverance with the lives of the soldiers that are being sacrificed to a group of savages that never cared about these people anyway.
So here's the thing, and again, maybe this is what I need for more than anything. I mean, pray for the people who are making these decisions.
Oh
right now,
my goodness!
okay,
yes.
because I can't even say it. I can't even say what I think, if you put all the pieces together here, is being said.
Oh yeah,
and
I agree.
If I am a military commander, just take them out. But and here's the difference: our leadership will not even use the lives of our hostages in order to defend the country. We won't put the hostages. We will make the defense of the country harder, make the work that we're going to have to do harder, make our lives harder, but those hostages will at least, and again, now we've got 30. I don't know what's going to happen. So there's going to be a whole, and what you're going to watch in the next week or two, there's going to be a whole, you want hostages? Give us breath. Give us appeasement.
That's what I'm fearful of. They're going to go buy themselves another.
Yeah, on the other hand, what's the other side, James? I'm going to say, I don't care about the hostages. Kill them. Do you understand?
I'm not, David.
So how do you kind of
listen? I'm not.
So
saying
there's going to
that.
be a dance that's going to be danced here.
I'm not saying that, but let me just tell you. I'm just going to be a prophet. Can I just tell you? I'm just going to,
Okay.
and I'm not going to be wrong about this. Okay, it's going to start with this. Then in 5 days, 10 days, 12 days, whatever, it's going to be, we've got 5 more high-level hostages that we'll give you if you give us 2 days. And then 2 days will go by, and then we'll give you 5 more hostages if you give us another 3 days. And this was going to happen.
I understand.
They're going to have a lot of time to regroup, but forget the regrouping thing. Let's just pretend that in this time that they have, all they get to do is breathe, and they don't regroup, and nothing happens. Let's just pretend that's the case. Every day that goes by right now around our world is another day where the level of anti-Semitism is growing. And the opposition to what Israel is doing to defend its interests is growing.
So, what do we do? And I'm glad I'm not sitting in that cabinet meeting right now.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I mean, God forbid I would have to make these kind of decisions. I mean, ugh.
I think as terrible as this sounds, you have to think about the casualties that come within the context of all of this. Yes, I get that. But you have to also make a calculation, and maybe this is a calculation they've already made. I'm certain they probably have made this calculation. What will it take for us to go in there and take those hostages ourselves? And can we do it without them taking their lives while we're on our way in there?
Probably not.
See, so if the calculation is probably not, that's probably why they're doing what they're doing right now in bargaining. I'm certain that's why they're doing that. But the problem that we have with that is, right, there's a lot of unanticipated doors that are getting opened right now.
Oh, yeah.
That are going to calculate to more destruction. And Israel doesn't have a choice. Israel doesn't normalize. Israel does not recover. Israel doesn't do any of that stuff unless they completely destroy Hamas and stay in Gaza.
Okay, so what happens if we do take 5 days, and then go back on the offensive.
This is what I think happens if that takes place. I think, and I'm not, again, like you said, I'm not in that cabinet meeting. And God forbid that I would ever second guess any of them. I think it's worthwhile asking these questions because my love for Israel is deep. And my love for the Jewish people is deep. And I'm very emotionally invested in this. This is serious to me, right? I've stopped my whole life. Like literally, my production schedule has stopped. All I'm doing is Israel now, all the time. The only thing I'm doing as a pastor is teaching the Bible like I'm supposed to and continuing to meet those obligations to the church body and doing the things I need to do at the church. And I'm focusing on all Israel all the time, including the nonsense that are happening in schools here, all of that. So I'm serious and I'm very invested in this when I talk about this. But here's the thing, right? If we do not, at the end of this 5 days, figure out a way to completely obliterate these savages before they come back to us with another proposal, we're going to be in trouble, David.
You know what I'm afraid of?
We're going to be in big trouble.
Did you hear the United States of America indicate that the Mediterranean Sea is very close to the tunnels? Did you hear?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, do you know that was done by design?
Oh, I know. Okay. But what happens if there is a plan to do that? Wait a minute. Do you know what that means?
Oh, I know exactly what that means. So for those of you that don't know what he's talking about, what David is talking about is potentially what could happen is it would have to be very carefully done. You'd have to do it with a series of very targeted and very well-formulated explosives. But in essence, what can happen is you can blow an entranceway from the Mediterranean into those tunnels. And what would basically happen is it would wipe out anything and everything that are in those tunnels immediately, but it would come at a great cost. Because by doing something like that, it would collapse literally everything that those tunnels sit over, right?
Sit under.
Yes,
but the main thing is the hostages.
Yeah, and that's the other problem. The other problem is you guarantee the loss of the hostages.
Which means, and I'm going to say this carefully and with a lot of love, okay? That means that the ones that are released now might be the only ones.
That's my fear.
So what do you do?
This is terrible. They do what they do. This is the thing that I also have to point out. And Gaddy pointed this out, and I agree. Whatever does happen, whatever casualties whatever civilian lives get lost, whether it be Jewish civilian lives or Palestinian, whatever, it's a war crime that Hamas committed, not Israel.
Let's make this clear. And I'll give you an example that kind of drives me crazy. I came across a TikTok where somebody is saying, and again, he looks like he's a reasonable, rational person. He says, yes, if there was a Hamas headquarters under the school of my children and somebody bombed the children in that school and called my children collateral damage, I would never forgive them. And I'm saying this, if there was Hamas headquarters underneath the school of your children and you brought your children to school,
yeah, you should never be forgiven.
You
should never be forgiven, dummy.
I mean, again, that's the moral breakdown. If there is a massive gas, container underneath the school of your children,
you're not wrong,
and that is a danger to all the people, all the children in the school, and there, you know that it's there. There's a big propane tank underneath the school. You know that it's there. You know it might blow up. Do you bring your kids to school? And if you do bring your kids to school and not make sure that propane gas is taken away from underneath the school, aren't you responsible?
You're not wrong.
And here's the thing that I'm not hearing. I'm not seeing and I'm not hearing, and nobody is basically talking about this. So here's the thing. Again, we're back to this very sensitive, very problematic issue. And I'm going to say this. It is, I believe, emotional terror, what they're doing right now. It is another kind of terror. And this is them putting children, their children, and our children on the altar for them to achieve their needs. And that is something that I don't think Israel's going to forgive them. I don't know why the world forgives them for this. I don't know why the world is quiet.
Yeah, yeah. I have to read a comment that Laughs Often writes, and I always appreciate their comments, but it is something that I want to address because sometimes we have disagreements among us with the chat. And the statement is here: it's a temporary ceasefire, and not a rolling over and playing dead scenario. And she says, Pastor James, sometimes it pays to step back and spend time with bare feet on God's earth and breathe. Here's the problem with a statement like that, and I think it's really important, right? I would agree with you a million zillion %. It's always wise to stop, to step back and really create some analysis for what you're looking at.
Okay.
But I want to talk about something that happened in the United States of America many, many years ago that taught us that scenario that's being brought up with right now, that step back scenario, is deadly. And I'll tell you what happened. Colorado, there's a little town called Columbine.
Ooh, wow.
Okay? We all remember what happened with Columbine. Matter of fact, I was a relatively new chaplain when Columbine happened. I'd been a chaplain for just a few years, and I was part of the debriefs for what happened with Columbine.
Ooh.
Here's something a lot of people don't know about Columbine. Those kids planted hundreds, north of 100 explosives, many of which that never happened never were detonated in that, and they were improvised explosives in that school. Okay? That's beside the point. One of the things that we learned very quickly with Columbine is we learned that when you have an active shooter, you cannot do what traditional law enforcement and military have always done and sit outside and wait for it to end, contain it, and then capture it. We learned in law enforcement very quickly that there are scenarios where it's not only acceptable, but it is necessary for you to move forward and to deal with the problem, and taking time to take a break, right, is deadly. And not only does it cost lives, but it creates destruction in the future. What's happening with Hamas right now is the equivalent of an active shooter situation going on in a school. We cannot afford to pause to a certain degree and allow this continual nonsense to happen.
Okay, but let's make the scenario a little bit complicated.
Let's do
what
it.
happens
Let's
if you
complicate
do
it.
have an active shooter and you hear the shooting going on, and then he reaches out and says, okay, if you stop shooting, I'll give you 2 of the hostages. Do you still break it?
They have to.
That is exactly the place where we are right now.
But the problem is in an active shooter situation, in an overwhelming majority of active shooter situations, if you could negotiate like that, it wouldn't be an active shooter situation.
Well, here's the thing. They are negotiating.
Yeah, well...
And Hamas is negotiating. Your active shooter is negotiating because he doesn't want to die.
Yeah, no, well, see, you are a brilliant military tactician. And this is why I'm gonna oppose you for a second. This is why I'm gonna beat you up for just a second on this.
I don't know.
You are. No, you are. You're not first of all, you've never been a dumb man. You've never even had a slow day. You know you're not. And I don't want to sound arrogant.
I've done some dumb things in my life.
I don't like working with dumb people. I just don't like working with dumb people. So when I say dumb people, like I've worked with plenty of people that lack intelligence but work hard and are amazing, and I'll work with them all day. But I don't work with people who are willfully ignorant. So let me just, I'm going to throw this back in your face for just 1 second, right? Okay. You are a man of God like I am. We have been made clean by the blood of Jesus.
Okay.
Okay. You are a man of God that understands the nature of Islam.
Yeah.
When you deal with a situation that is an active shooter, that active shooter has already determined the fact that their life is no longer important and are willing to sacrifice their own life in order to maximize the damage that takes place. So although you might have leaders of Hamas who are not willing to take their lives, okay?
Okay.
Everybody who is working on behalf of Hamas not only is willing to take their lives, but see it as their greatest honor to take their own life for the purpose of achieving what they want to achieve. So the problem is you don't have the preservation of life being the variable. Think about it like this. If I come to you right now and I put a weapon in front of you and I say, get your hands up, you're going to comply. You value your life. You want to live your life a long time. If I am a person that if I take my weapon and I point it at you and you're wearing a bomb vest, you're going to say, Allahu Akbar, and it's on. So you cannot use the preservation of a person's life to stifle the action that they commit because they don't want their lives to be taken.
But something's broken here, and here's where we are, okay? And this happens rarely, but it does happen, okay? The sanctity of life, okay, and the the sanctity of my kin, my people that I love, okay? In the case of Hamas has been broken. There are other places where this has happened in history. One of the classic examples would I say maybe the kamikazes, okay, who realized that in the dedication to their nation, they were willing to get on the plane knowing that they're going to die. Okay, that is something that we don't really comprehend. But what has happened is that Satan has created an environment in Gaza where the sanctity of life has been completely broken. Now, if you take the sanctity of life as one of the basic aspects of godliness, because Judeo-Christian creed says this, okay, you break that, and what does Hamas said again? One of the Muslims, what do the jihadis say again? We glorify death the way you glorify life.
That's right.
We hold death. So here's the thing: the Hamas is at a point where their lives are not important. Some of them, yes, some of them, no. But basically, they're willing to sacrifice the lives of the people that they love, so-called they love, in the name of their
Bismillah Allah,
yes,
in the name of their God.
In the name of their God. So they're willing to give up their children, their loved ones. Okay, now the only reason they complain about how many loved ones are dying, because that is a resource, that's an asset for them. The problem is Hamas has run out of their resources, meaning they're realizing that the world doesn't really care about their lives. I mean, think about this. Okay, I think something like 11,000 have died, and the world is not going crazy. I mean, there's lip service, there's a lot of noise, but the world hasn't gone crazy. I mean, nothing is going. So they're realizing that they're not going to, and the Arab world for sure has not gone crazy. So they're realizing that the worth of their lives, their children's lives, is not enough for them to achieve their goal. And now they're putting my children's life on the line.
Habibi, let's just face the hypocrisy straight in the face. The stupidity that surrounds this is just obscene. We, with a group of allies, in the name of protecting oil assets, killed 30,000 Arabs. 30,000. You're talking about the area of the Gulf. You're talking about Syria. We did that in recent years.
Well, how many people
just
died in Iraq?
Come on.
How many people died in Iraq?
I mean, come on. Iraq alone. I'm not even thinking of Iraq. I'm just thinking about Syria, and I'm thinking about parts of the Gulf. If you want to get into Iraq, now we're talking 300,000 plus Arabs.
So
over the last 30 years.
So why
and
is
no one's
the world
about
yelling about Palestinian lives
They're
and not yelling about Jewish lives?
Because this is all satanic.
Recap.
It goes right back to this. It's all satanic. It just blows my mind.
What do we do now? And what do we want the people who are listening and seeing us to do?
Well, listen, there is a lot. There's a lot to say about what our people should be doing, because I have a lot of clarity of thought in that area. And you've already hit up on some of it, right? Our people need to be praying for wisdom for the cabinet, right? Our people need to be seeking out the mind and the heart of God for what God wants us to do. We as a people need to be going out of our way to be praying for the Jews. We pray for the peace of Israel. I do that every night with my children. We pray for Israel. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Those are all things, and we need to speak the truth. We need to speak the truth. You know?
Okay, but again, this is my job, is to bring the plight of my people here. I need, first of all, to we're discussing the hostages on this level, and we can do that. We can discuss them on this level. I want to go back down to the people who are now waiting to see if the name of their child or the name of their sister is on that list right now.
I would go crazy if my babies were gone for 30 days.
And there's nothing you can do.
6 weeks.
Think about how that tears apart, okay, what you can do. And you see it, you know what's going on. The hostages, the families. Think about the families who are going to get their children back and the families who are not going to get their children back. And think about the families who have, who have a son in captivity, and nobody's talking about males.
But Habibi, even when these parents get their children back, like, I don't know if anybody ever thought of this. I think about this because I do a lot of work with families that go through all kinds of trauma. I've been working with trauma victims for 30 years. Like, that kid's going to come back.
No, he's not going to.
But that kid, 6 weeks.
No.
6 weeks. They're done.
They're
mentally
deeply wounded.
It's how this is going to sound so terrible that I'm saying this, David. This is going to sound terrible. Thank God that some of those kids are babies. Because if those babies survive and they come back, they at least have a better chance of not having to suffer the kind of trauma that a 5-year-old is going through watching this right now.
These people are going to come back horrifically wounded on so many different levels. I mean, again, this is a situation that we're dealing with, and here's the problem. I don't think the world has had to deal with this kind of evil since World War II. This kind of adulterated. Think what has happened. What Satan has done in Gaza to create this kind of dynamic. How much work he's done to create a death cult with modern weapons.
It's Islam. This is Islam. I try to tell this to people all the time. This is Islam. This is if you're a fundamentalist. I don't like to use the term extremist. This is not extremism. This is fundamentalism. If you are a fundamentalist of Islam, you believe in the fundamentals of the Quran, you do exactly what we're seeing right now.
Which is why I don't understand why people in New York don't understand that if they ever get through me, they're on the way to you.
David, forget that if they get through to me, they're on the way to you. Let's extend their stupidity to levels. How about we just talk about these dummies, and forgive me for saying this, right, that are in office. These two girls that are so proud to wear their hijab, Talib and the Somalian
Ilhan
girl.
Omar.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar. You know what cracks me up about Talib and Omar? If you stuck them in the middle of Gaza City right now, they would not live for 5 seconds.
But they're
going around marching, screaming for this rights or that right. She doesn't even understand the culture of his people. If she went to Somalia, if Omar went to Somalia,
I think she's from Somalia.
Yeah, she is. If she went to Somalia and even spent 5 minutes under Sharia law living the life she's living right now, she's gone.
It doesn't matter. They want to use and abuse the freedom that they have in the West.
It's Marxism. There are fundamentalist Islamists that are. Why do you think? Can I ask this question? Why do you think that people like those that associated with the former USSR did so well with Muslims? Why were they all? Why did they all? Why? Because let me tell you what Islamists love. They love the same thing that Marxists loves. They love to drown people away from the individualism that's associated with God's declaration of them being fearfully and wonderfully made. They love the idea of collectivism in the name of an extremist power rule. It's a spirit of Antichrist.
Okay. Can we tie in Russia?
Sure.
What is the name of Russians, a half-legal mercenary army? Warner's army?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Do you know that they're on their way to Syria right now? And
Doesn't surprise me.
And according to some of what we're hearing, their job is going to be to give the Hezbollah and Iran in Syria a anti-aircraft umbrella.
Doesn't surprise me one bit. It doesn't surprise
Does that
me one
tie
bit.
into a few interesting things that we're talking about?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me one bit, because again, we know exactly what's going on here. Look, and we also know this. We also know that Israel, and let's just tell the truth. We all know that Israel won't even think of lifting a finger on Syria until they get Russia's permission to do so.
Well, there are things that have happened in Syria that the Russians didn't like, including
Damascus.
the Ilyushin that was dropped.
Fair enough. The Damascus airport and some of the other things like that. But those are all boundaries that Russia tolerates.
Okay.
Because it's not in the area that Russia declares to be their sovereign territory. So fine, okay, get it, granted, but still.
So there is this spider web of interests that is happening in the north right now. And I'm going to say this: the United States of America is part of the vectors that are pulling each one in direction. Israel, Syria, Hamas, Hezbollah, and even the United States. All of them are playing this. And again, I believe we're on the edge. And I believe it could go this way and it could go this way.
Can I just tell you, this is really funny, just a little side note by what you just mentioned. When they killed Prigozhin, who was the leader of the Wagner group at the time, when they killed him.
Well, the plane fell out of the sky.
The plane fell out of the sky. Yeah, that's right. I made a big stink about it, and I told everybody one of the next destinations is going to be Syria. I told them that. I told them they would go straight in. They would go further and further and further and further north. They would make their way up into Aleppo, and they would come right back down on a supply chain mission. I said that. I've been, and people, and even in the chat, people acknowledge this. They called me nuts for saying that. Like I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. And look at what's happening right now.
I'm a great lover of football. And the illustration that I use that there's ways to watch football. Okay. And we all sitting on the TV with the multiple cameras, and you see everything from different this, and you've got that kind of cable camera kind of floating all above. So
you're saying what we would call soccer, football.
No, right. I'm talking about American football.
Oh, okay.
Another way to watch the game is to put a camera inside the helmet of one of the linebackers, and that's another way to
really
see
cool.
it.
Yeah.
And another way to see it is get in the Goodyear blimp and look down at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've more or less stayed on the cable camera. This is what me and you do because we're sitting over here and we're watching this.
Yep.
There's two things. I do have, I think, a little bit of an ability to get down on the line of scrimmage and look out through the helmet.
Way better than most.
And
absolutely.
I'm saying that from that point of view, first of all, it's both, I think a linebacker would say it's both a lot simpler and a lot more complicated. For instance, it's a lot simpler. My job is to stop that guy that's in front of me and let him get to the quarterback. It's more complicated because I have to do that and push everybody to the left in order to let the runner go to the right, and so forth and so on.
Yep.
So that's the linebacker view, and I think that's what we're talking about here. The hostages. Yes.
Yeah.
No. The tank commander that puts a round in a window not knowing if the hostages are there. The engineering officer who has to decide if he blows up the door to this building or not knowing what's going on. That's the linebacker view. And I'm going to say it is hard, and it is play after play. And somebody is actually making the decision because I, the linebacker, don't decide what play we're running.
Yeah.
I, the linebacker, listen to what the quarterback says, who's listening to what the coach says.
Yeah, and I want to remind everybody of something that's very, very important because people have to take this in context. Do not confuse the aggressive conversation that I'm having with David about these things with a lack of assumption or understanding about one fact that a lot of people might not know who don't know David, okay? David has been to the places that we're debating right now.
Totally.
He's been to the places that we're debating from the perspective of a diplomat, from the perspective of intelligence gathering, and most importantly, in many ways, from the perspective of the view of a tank. Okay? So what David is bringing to the table here is going to be a lot more significant than some theoretical analysis that gets brought in based on an understanding of the geopolitics. I think that's an important thing that I want to remind everybody of.
And what I'm saying is on the line of scrimmage, it is much more complicated than what most people see. And here's the thing.
I know.
People like me and you, James, are making life and death decisions
I know.
that are on a level that is, I mean, just use your imagination.
I can't even
A
begin to
tank
imagine.
commander makes a mistake and puts a round into a building that has 12 Palestinians in there. That might be enough to blow the whole thing to pieces. Or you make a mistake and don't take out somebody who is standing in the window with an AK-47, and you know that I've been there. Okay, and as a result of that, one of your men dies. And those are the things that are going on right now. And again, if there's anything that I can say to the people watching us, guys, pray for those young men and women that are making those split-second decisions on the line of scrimmage right now, inside the dirt and the dust and the fear and the sweat and the blood of what's going on. So that's one thing that I think is critical. And in that, I'm glad to say that my team is better than their team.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Not even a question.
Which means to a certain extent, maybe this ties into what we're talking about, I can allow myself maybe, and we can talk about this, to take chances that I think might not be the best that you're looking at, because I do believe that my team is better than their team.
Yeah, you have a better understanding, and I would not debate that for even a second.
On the other hand, let's go into the cable camera, okay, where you see all of the movements, okay, and you're seeing, all right, that a defense that is only running and not passing is going to have a problem, or a defense or an offense who's only passing and not running is going to have a problem. And you are right, Israel hasn't found yet this rhythm that we thought that we needed in order to be able to defend the country truthfully. And then I'm going to go into the Goodyear blimp, and I'm going to say, wait a minute. When you look at it from that angle,
I know.
Okay, there is Satan in here.
Oh.
There's Russian in here. There's Iranian in here, and everything is coming down. And what I'm trying to say is this, and again, this is my job here. I want the people watching us to understand, first of all, the complexities of this, and the split-second decisions that sometimes go this way and that way, and to understand that there is, I'm going to say it like this, and I hope I can do this without getting too emotional. There is somebody above the Goodyear blimp.
Amen.
And he is watching what's going
Amen.
on all the time. And let's not forget that for a moment.
I want to, because we're running out of time, but there is something I do want to do, and I will give you an opportunity to talk about it a little bit. But every time we take a group to Israel, we go to Yad Vashem. Mm-hmm. Yad Vashem is, of course, what everybody refers to as the Holocaust Museum over there. If you went to Israel for one reason alone, and that reason was Yad Vashem, it would be worth the trip. Now, I got myself to the point, David knows this, where I've been to Israel 8 times, maybe 9, I forgot. And probably the last 3 or 4 times, I never walked into Yad Vashem. I stood outside, had a cup of coffee, because it was very difficult for me to harness my emotions of anger walking through there and that type of thing. I had not been it for quite some time. And the last time I was in Israel, I was with my wife. And I looked at David and I just said, okay, whatever, here we go. Because the last few times David and I actually hung out together, had coffee. I told David, I said, I'm going to go with my wife, okay. And of course, this was her first time to Israel, so I wanted her to be a part of it. She was also with her mom. And I don't know, a lot of people don't know this. Nicole is half black, half German. Her mother and grandmother, Germans, knows all about. I mean, her grandmother remembers the Nazi kids. That whole she remembers all of that stuff, and so this was especially meaningful for her to go over there and to see how quickly a nation can lose its bearing and how far things can go.
Yeah.
So we get to the end of Yad Vashem. And there is it's, by the way, Brandling, it was remodeled years ago and is really very beautiful. You get to the courtyard. There's a little courtyard in the exit when you exit through this little the little zigzag. And as we sit in the corner, David gathers around, and I promise you this, it is the most emotional speech you will ever hear David give. With maybe the exception of when we're in the north, there at the Jordan River, and he talks about his son a little bit. That is very emotional as well, and it's powerful. I actually have that on video, by the way. It's pretty heavy. because Yardan is meaning above Dan, and it's just beautiful how his son got his name and all of that. It's just a great story. But I don't know if you remember saying this. You said this the last time, and I heard you say it a few times before, but you said this when we were in Yad Vashem. You told everybody in the group to cherish and enjoy the time that they were in Israel, because the way you said it is, you never know if you'll be back. Yep. And a lot of people used to tell David, well, David, you don't understand because, you're not messianic yet, but we will come back to the New Jerusalem. We used to say that to him all the time.
There you go.
But there was that, but he made that very clear. And he said something really interesting. He said, when we were in Masada, on the top of Masada, he said the same thing. He said, but as Jews, we would rather be dead than not free. We'll do whatever we can to defend. Going back to the same thing, every single Jew who has understood their call and their life. Look, let me just say this. You don't go to an IDF soldier. You don't go to a Jew and say, did you fight in the war? Your question is, which war was yours? Yeah. That's the question. That's David. Matter of fact, David was the one that taught me that. We take a lot for granted. We don't know what we're going to have the next day. And I think that when we talk about the Goodyear blimp perspective, when we talk about the wire cable perspective, when we talk about the head camera perspective, there's one aspect of this that can't be embedded within the heart of any analyst of this issue, and that is the personal aspect of this, where every Jew faces that. What I have is special, and I can't take it for granted because the people around me hate me. And I don't know if I'll, the whole idea is I don't know how much longer I'll have this. That's kind of the way. So they're willing to do anything in order to keep that. I think that's an important aspect to bring out here.
Let's put it this way. I'm the end of a long series of forefathers who have had to deal with this. I'm not the only one dealing with this. My grandfather's dealt with this. Yep. Okay, my grandfather came from Eastern Europe, the pogroms. I mean, my great-great-grandfather. So everybody living in Israel today is a, how do you say, a long descendant of a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And by the way, not all of us survived. Some of us definitely did not survive. Yep. So I know where I am. And it's very interesting to see the soldiers, before they're going in, singing songs that we have been singing for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah.
And chants that we've been chanting for thousands of years, and prayers that we have been praying for thousands of years. These are these young men and women who went to that rave, that danced and this, and now they're actually reconnecting to the same songs. Okay? And the most important thing is, don't be afraid.
Yep.
והעיקר לא לפחד כלל. And you see them doing this again, just like their fathers did, just like their grandfathers did. There is a sense, and I think most Americans don't have that sense of continuation, that you're at the tip of a mountain that has grown and grown and grown over the years underneath you, or you're at the end of a long line of descendants, and it's my job, it's our job now to be the ones in the front. And I think Israel has picked up on this.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. And I think that, the more and more you stop for a moment to contemplate the brevity of something like that, it completely changes your perspective on the things that we're seeing day in and day out. And I think that is a very important aspect of the things that we're talking about. Like it's very easy to take the things that we talk about on a regular basis and minimize those things, not understanding the full implications of what happens in the heart and the mind of somebody who's fighting a real fight over some very, very real issues. And to that I would wholeheartedly agree with you on. And it is amazing. The priests now, the IDF is now beginning to go to the priests to bless them before they go to war. We're
Yep.
seeing that
And
there's a story of this.
I actually heard some of the prayers over the radio system,
man.
over the comm system, and it just gave me shivers. Which is, James, I should be there. I mean,
I get it. I get it. But right now you're fighting. You are contributing just as much. You're fighting a different type of fight that needs to be fought, because if we don't have people fighting that fight, then these men can't fight the fight that they need to fight. And I think that's a very important aspect of what we're talking about right now.
which brings us back. Please, we need your support. And yes, can we mention the Balagan connection?
Yes,
and
David,
kinda make sure?
we need to do all of that, actually. I think it's important because I think that it's if you guys ask about this, and I want to say this, I'm very proud of you guys
yes.
in how you've been supporting David. You have made me proud. I'm not sure if this is true still, but I think that we have the distinction of being the church that's given him, or at least has led him to the most support.
That is true.
And our community. And I'm grateful for that. And I want that to continue to be the case. I want that to be our reputation. I want us to be those people, because I think that we achieve for ourselves great blessing when we bless Israel and when we bless God's ancestrally chosen people. And David, I don't think I even got to tell you this story. This is an interesting story. We got contacted a while ago through the consul general's office. I was in the consul general's house, the consul general of Israel, and I got approached by, and I won't get into all the names and details because I don't know how much of this information I can release, but I got approached by a very critical person in Israel, who his whole job, and this is an appointed position by the prime minister.
Okay.
His job is to raise money for Jews that want to move from wherever they are into Israel as their homeland. And it's a significant undertaking. I mean, it's not a small thing.
I'm one of those.
Yeah. Yep. And so this is so cool what happened here. He came to me and he said, excuse me 1 second. Let me just mute this for 1 second.
My family is part of that immigration system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Israel does work.
It's amazing how that works.
Can I put a side note into this?
Yeah,
though?
please.
Do you know that there are people who said that because the state of Israel sees itself as the homeland for the Jewish people and not the homeland for the Eskimos or not the homeland for the Aborigines, but sees themselves as a homeland for the Jewish people, that it is a racist nation?
It's so ridiculous. They can take that idea and just shove it. Sorry, I'm just going to get mad the more and more I think about it. But let me just say this, because this is such a great story, and this is a compliment to you guys. This is me telling a story to tell you how proud I am of this community and how proud I am of you here on the YouTube world and the Rumble world. They contacted me, the guy who's the overseer of this. Yeah, he came to me and he said, I was wondering if there's any way that maybe you would be open to mentioning what we do on your show. I know a lot of people watch. You have a large reach. And if you could just mention us, maybe even give you a video. I said, I'll do better than that. Come on my show, spend an hour with me. Let's sit down and let's tell the whole world about what you guys are doing and what's going on. And he said, can we mention the fundraising? I said, absolutely. So he comes on the show. He does this. The next day, was it 2 days later? 2 days later, I get contacted by somebody from the Knesset who's working for this guy, who basically tells me, James, and this was, I think when we did this show, we did it like 4 months into the year. Something like 4 months into the year, his phone is talking to him. 4 months into the year is, I think, when we did the show. It was, actually it wasn't. I think it was in July that we did the show. He called us and he said, we are all shocked over here. We're completely shocked. I said, what do you mean you're shocked? He said, we did that show, and from that show, we raised more money in 1 day for our cause than we have in the first 7 months of this year. Now, my theory behind it was, this is just my theory, we did a thing where we beat up the Salvation Army over their wokeism, and some massive, huge donors pulled out that watch us. And we're talking millions of dollars, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And my guess is they took that money and put it in Israel. It's just my guess.
But
So my point is, this audience is amazing.
It is.
You are making the difference in a lot of people's lives through your support.
including mine.
Yeah.
And me and my wife, we've been here. And again, as you know, my mode of employment has dried up completely. So we're doing that. But there's more than that. I mean, Joel's ministry, Nativa, is being blessed. And again, there's a lot of things that are going on. And again, continue your support. And here's the thing, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, it is.
Israel's economy is going to go into a slump, and this is part of the way that you can support Jews, Israelis, whatever. I mean, this is something that we need right now. I've got a family staying in my house, and they've moved out of their house. They're still paying rent in their house. They're not paying rent in my house.
Wow.
But again, this is part of what Israel is doing.
It's the effort.
And it's not over. I mean, as long as this situation is going to last, we do need your help and we need your support.
Yeah, and I also want to say this too, and I do thank you for supporting David. Go to his YouTube page, Balagan Connection. Support him there. I'm begging him to start a locals. We're going to have to do that soon.
Yep.
We want to do that. But we thank you guys for you supporting him. I also want to make a very personal thank you. Thank you guys for supporting me on locals. You guys don't know this, but when you support me on locals, that money goes directly to me and my family. It goes straight in our to do the things that we do. And what you don't realize is that when you support me on locals, you are enabling me to do more and more and more and more of the stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So for every single one of you that do that, you are helping me in immense ways, and I want to thank you so much for doing that. Speaking of locals, we're about to go on locals right now for just a few minutes, not long. We're going to take some questions. That's kind of always our no holds barred time, so we're going to do that. I'm very much looking forward to that. So, David, any final thoughts or anything like that before we get started on this?
Well, again, this is a very, very touchy time. This is going to be ceasefire at some point. The question is what's going to happen. If the ceasefire is going to hold, how many of the hostages are going to be released? And what I think is critical right now, and this is as critical as the military strategy, is that Israel steps back into this immediately afterward and turns on the fire again.
We cannot afford for Israel to not do that.
Yep.
Israel has to do that. I think Israel realizes that. The Middle East certainly understands that. There is no way we survive this thing. No way at all that we survive this thing if that does not happen. And it is absolutely critical. So, all right, let's close in prayer and ask the Lord to go before us, and then we'll switch over to locals. Father in heaven, we just thank you, Lord, for your faithfulness. And Lord, we're just grateful for all that you're doing, Lord, in our lives, Lord, and the things that are happening, Lord, and what you're doing in us and through us, Lord. Father, just go before us and fill us with your spirit. Give us your wisdom, Lord, into things, Lord, that are in front of us. Lord, help us to just glorify you. And Lord, we pray for the nation of Israel. We pray for the government leaders that you would give them wisdom. We pray for those hostages, Lord, that you would keep them safe and heal their minds already, Lord. We pray for the soldiers that are there, Lord. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We put it in your hands, Lord. We love you and thank you. We look to you and we ask these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. By the way, I do want to mention this really quickly. Everybody knows who Vin Dog is. Vin is probably one of the great ones, the last of the Rick D's element there in public radio here in Southern California. He's one of the more famous radio DJs. He just basically told us that 20% of all of his merch sales he's going to kick over to you, David. He just told me that right now. That's a big deal. So Vinny, thank you for that. I appreciate the text. I just saw that, bro. You're awesome. And we're grateful for the many people that are like you, that are generous and are seeking to support people like this. So thank you. We love you guys. Guys, listen, God bless you. Keep fighting the good fight. We'll see you on locals in just a few minutes. Keep seeking the Lord. And remember, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. This is a worthwhile fight. Love you guys. God bless you.